panel. So we've assembled this really cutting-edge group of panelists who have focused on how do you design user behavior? How do you change people's day-to-day lives, day-to-day habits in ways that we haven't seen before? So we've got a really nice panel today. You guys can come on up when you're ready. So now that we've got two of the four, why don't we start with some intros? Maybe Alex, you can kind of intro your company and go down the line. I don't know. Not yet.
Yeah? Oh, there we go. All right, great. Hi, guys. My name's Alex. I've been hooking up video games to fitness experiences to make them interactive for several years now. And currently I'm the CEO of BitGym, and we bring interactive multiplayer and cardio experiences to cardio machines with iPads and Android devices.
Cool. I'm Cheryl Kellond, and you can think of my company, Bia, as the Lululemon for wearables. We help women achieve new athletic firsts and develop healthy habits for lifelong fitness.
My name is Katy Fike, and I'm a PhD gerontologist, and I work with companies to help them think about creating products and services for the older adult market.
Excellent. And my name is Nir Eyal. I blog at nirandfar.com, and I lecture at the Stanford Business School and Design School on behavior design. So Cheryl, one thing you did not say about changing behavior is that you have recently changed your own athletic behavior. You just finished your first Ironman.
Yes, I did.
To celebrate your birthday.
I did.
And now you're in life. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Boom.
And so you really live this brand for Bia. Can you tell us more about how you changed your own behavior and how Bia fits in?
Because I think it's actually really important to how I think about wearables as well. So I was mother of four, 35 years old, not really happy with how I looked. I was working all the time, dealing with the kids, didn't have a sense of my own, self and identity. So I decided to set up a big, crazy goal for myself and run my first 5K at 39. Well, that first 5K, that big goal I set, I liked how my body changed. I liked the new people I met, and that 5K sort of turned into a lifestyle. Slowly but surely, but because of how it made me feel and because of the different social circles it put me in. So, which is, the only way that, 4 years later, I can be an Ironman. Because you can't create that kind of behavioral change on your own. You have to do it within a community.
So how are wearables going to make this possible for everyone else?
Great question. My company started because as I was starting to run, I couldn't find a device that I wanted to use to track how fast I went, how far I went. My husband and I had a moment of contention because the best time for me to go run was early in the morning before the kids got up, and I was running alone in the dark, and he was worried about me. No device, dealt with that capability at all. I ordered every device out there on Amazon, every Garmin, every Nike. Everything I tried on was super complex to use. I came with an instruction manual. I'd put it on my wrist and my arm would go numb. I would run and my wrist would bruise. None of them were built for how I wanted to use them. And none of them solved my biggest problem of it was dark early in the morning and my husband was afraid. So we designed a product, for women that fit them correctly, fit their lifestyle correctly, and took away a lot of the impediments in their way for developing that habit.
So you really remove the barriers to create the habit. And that's a big part of why people start these new habits, because you've removed the friction. And Katy, you specialize in elder care and products, new technologies for elder care. But I have to admit that most people's conception of early adopters is not those who are up there in their years. But why is this an interesting market? What are you seeing out there?
I think the numbers are part of what's getting a lot of people interested is just the pure demographics. But I think we're also seeing, I was saying to Nir earlier, that actually later life creates a whole lot of opportunities for new habits, new life experiences. And so if you think about it, your life is kind of similar in your 20s, 30s, 40s. You're kind of going to work, you have your kids, there's a lot of routine. And then that all starts to really change in later life when maybe there might be a divorce, there might be quitting your job, there might be your kids leave the house. Suddenly there's all these new times where you need to rethink about your daily routine. And also I think there's just different priorities in later life, and people are looking for tools that help them live the life they want to live longer and longer. So I think, especially on the health and wellness side, I think boomers are very, very apt to find new things to help them age successfully.
So you brought some goodies. Show us the best of breed. What are you seeing out there? So you meet with a lot of companies. What's really changing user behavior?
Well, it's interesting. We were talking earlier, and I joke that I try to help companies fight against big, beige, and boring, because that's traditionally the products we've given to older adults. We have designed for them without older adults involved at all, and then we lob these ugly products over to them and wonder why they're not excited about them. And so I think we're seeing a shift now of what we're calling kind of ageless style of products that really show they understand what the older adult wants, how they want to be talked to, what fits well in their life, and then design them beautifully. And so this is one of the ones that I brought. This is a company called Lively, and they're a activity monitoring company, and it's activity sharing. So it arrives at your house with this cellular-based hub, which is one key thing for older adults, right? You don't want to assume that everyone has Wi-Fi, so you plug this in and it's cellular. And then these are little accelerometer motion detectors, and you put these on different places around the house. So you might put it on a refrigerator or a pill box, and it helps the family start to share about activities that are going on. And I think this company's been really sensitive to lots of things around, avoiding talking about monitoring. It's more about activity sharing. The design is beautiful. It's something you might actually want to have in your home. The setup is really easy. So I think we're seeing a shift where people are actually stopping to listen to what older adults want and need, and then designing things that don't scream, stigma or I'm old and I have all these chronic diseases. Instead, it's I'm trying to stay independent and someone cares about me and wants to know how I'm doing.
I see. So Alex, what are you seeing? What's in users' way to exercising that you're kind of removing the friction of?
Yeah, I mean, like you suggested, the biggest problem with getting any exercise trigger to happen is the short-term biases you have. I mean, basically everyone wants to exercise. Like their prefrontal cortex is like all systems go on exercising, but you could do it tomorrow, or I don't really know exactly what I'm supposed to do, or I just don't feel like it right now. All these short-term motivations can come up. So removing friction is a big thing. Educating people so that they feel confident in what they need to do, and that will be enough. Making it fun so that they can look forward to it a little bit with their kind of short-term dopamine senses. And just giving them, and you can also do some other things like try to create a sense of loss aversion. Like if I don't go, something bad will happen. This might be something monetary like Gym Pact does, where they literally charge you a few dollars if you don't check in at the gym. Or it could be more social, like it's kind of how personal trainers work. If you don't do it, someone's going to disapprove of your actions. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing is to stack up as many short-term behaviors in your favor, or short-term like wants in your favor, and try to reduce the short-term friction points stopping you from going. And if you can do that, there's a good chance that the fitness habit you're trying to form will actually trigger again and again and again, and form that habit.
So for those of you who haven't seen Alex's product, it's an iPad app that essentially can look at your body, and correct me if I'm misstating this, but it looks at your body and it knows when you're on the treadmill, when you're running, or when you're on a bicycle as well. And it will change the image that you see so that it looks like you're hiking through the Alps, or that you're biking down a nice pathway somewhere in nature. So it simulates that you're outdoors when you're exercising indoors.
So that's one of those 5 things I mentioned. That just makes it kind of fun and engaging, something you kind of look forward to try and combat the other things. One of the things we're adding in the next few months is multiplayer, so that you'll be able to connect with your friend across the country and go on that run through the Alps. And that's to add a second short-term thing, knowing that if I don't show up, my friend's going to think less of me, that is going to ruin our exercise date, et cetera. So we're just trying to stack up things in your favor so the exercise action actually happens.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that's useful to know when it comes to changing behavior is the examples of companies that didn't work out. So I'm curious to know, what are you all seeing out there that you think companies are trying that they really shouldn't be doing? Anything that you see that won't work?
Good question.
There's a whole bunch of health apps out there, and none of them is really provided the panacea.
I mean, obviously, most people want to exercise or be healthy or whatever, and only a small fraction of us are succeeding. So there's a problem. So what is the problem? It's
One of the gaps we've seen in the market is that they're so focused on the mechanics of exercise, the data around exercise, becoming king of the hill or Captain Awesome, and don't focus on the fact that the thing that's going to change your behavior the most is the social circle you're a part of and who you identify with. They underemphasize community. So I think there's a lot of fitness tracking apps out there that collect a lot of data that might have also collected a lot of users, but they're also used for a very short period of time, where you see other sites that really create a sense of community and identity. Like something like Strava has, very tight community, super strong identity. Like, you know, it's an app for guys who like to bike up hills is the best way to describe it. And when I'm riding my bike on the road, I can pick out every Strava rider on there. There's a way about them, because they've done a job of creating a community around that passion, but that community then motivates.
So would you say that the social community is a prerequisite? You have to have social rewards built into your product? Is it nice to have or a must have?
I think it's a must have.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I think it's just, you know, the more things you can stack up, the better. And I think it's extremely powerful if you can pull it off. But I would say Gympact is moderately successful or very successful, and they're doing it purely off monetary incentives.
And I think there's different components of social. Like, I think one of the differences as people get older is it's not about social for competition. Like, I don't think a leaderboard is going to be something that gets an 80-year-old really excited about getting to the top of the leaderboard. But I think, you know, doing something that makes me feel like I have identity, that I'm connected to people, and that it's, you know, what I'm doing matters for the long run, I think is, so social is such a big thing. And I think there's different socials that's going to work with different people. And what would work on the Strata guys is different than what's going to work with your women, and it's different than what's going to work with older people.
So one thing we did for our women, when we designed our product, we purposely made something that looked iconic, that you could pick out in line at the grocery store or at the Starbucks. So these women felt like, you know, they could see some other woman wearing it and know they were part of this community and start identifying with that. We purposefully made watch bands that you could brand to commemorate milestone events, your first marathon, your first Ironman, again, to create more of that community. So we really put it front and center of our product design.
What about, oh yeah.
I think another thing that people often do, especially when they start designing products for older adults, is they start acting like seniors have nothing better to do than manage their chronic diseases all day, and like that they are going to be wanting to, you know, fill in all this information and do all this stuff. And I think, you know, the more you can make it something that goes into the background is what they really want. But over again, I see companies be like, well, we're just going to have them do this and fill out that and do this. I'm like, that puts diabetes right here, and they want diabetes, you know, in the back of their mind. So I think don't assume that older adults, that the negative stuff is what they want to talk about. Help them do that as quickly as possible and get onto the social and more meaningful things.
Yeah, something that we talked about before when it comes to designing for elderly users is that the principles around designing for the elderly are actually the principles of good design for all of us.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to ask a question. Who in the room has talked to your consumer as part of your design process? So raise your hand if you've talked to your consumer. Okay. Keep your hand up if any of those people were over the age of 60. So a lot less hands in the room. And I believe that, you know, in this world of lean startup, that one of the most effective ways you can get product feedback is by talking to novice users and often older users, and that they will help you beeline into what is not intuitive about your product, what is offensive about your product, what could be better designed. And if you focus in on that, you know, a lot of younger people they'll compensate for bad design and won't let you see where something is bad in the design. But I think an older user will often kind of show you where the stumbling points are more quickly. And if you design something that works well for a novice, who works well for someone with maybe not as perfect eyesight or someone with less dexterity, that's going to work well for everybody downstream. But the reverse does not happen. If you've nailed it for 22-year-olds, that doesn't mean it's going to work for 72-year-olds.
So I've been asking the questions for about 10 minutes or so. Can we maybe take some questions from the audience? Does anybody else have something that they want to make sure the panel addresses? If not, I can go all day on this stuff. Yeah, please.
My question is around the identity statement you made. I think it's extremely important to realize that identity is as diverse as people, right, and personality. So some people like to be social, some people like to show off, some people like to actually be very reserved, some people would like to wear something, some people would not like to wear something, right? It doesn't match as enough fashion. It's a very complicated, intimate process to decide what to put on you or anything.
Yeah. So let me just repeat the questions for those who couldn't hear. So it sounds like almost a market segmentation question of what product are you building for your user segment? Are you building a product that's about which identity of the user? And how do you decide who to build for? Anybody want to take that?
And I totally agree on the identity piece. And I think, I often talk about stuff for older adults, but I mean, that's such a huge segment. I mean, over 50, that is huge. And so I think really segmenting within that is important. But there are some kind of macro trends you can pay attention to, but I totally agree. And I find myself telling entrepreneurs more often than not how undifferent seniors are than the rest of the population, rather than trying to highlight, oh, they're so different. I mean, they do things and I'm like, no, would you want that? Would you enjoy that? So I think it's a lot of personality stuff stays the exact same throughout all of life.
Is that something you can know? Can you know your market size when you first get going, or when you guys designed your products? Were you thinking this is for me and that's why I want it, or were you thinking this is because of a large market of users who need this?
I mean, we started by building something we wanted. We built something that was very video game heavy. We had race cars and pixelated graphics. And we just learned through iteration that what people were really excited about was this, this HD trail footage from around the world. And it was an older audience, about 35 to 55, and we just kind of went with it. I mean, you can design a product either for yourself, that's a nice shortcut, or if you're careful, you can design it for other people by bringing them into the loop and seeing how they work with things. And that's what we ended up doing at BitGym.
We started out designing for ourselves, which is actually not a bad place to start because I'm a 40-year-old woman. I spend most of the money in America, and I'm the least under-designed for a demographic out there, probably, except for 80-year-olds. So it was a pretty good place to start, but we looked really broadly at our market. We spent a lot of time with more advanced athletes, as well as, trying to go back to where we started in our early days, before we started running and before we got fit. So we started with our core sense of judgment, but we definitely spent the time understanding the market on both ends of the spectrum. And when we recruited our beta users, we did a great job recruiting from all ends of the spectrum. We've got the first-time 10K, 70-year-old woman. We've got the former college athlete, and everyone in between, both demographically and geographically. So we pulled really strongly from, red states and rural places. And
I think we have time for one more question. Is that right? Okay. Yes, in the yellow.
Yes, hi. I'm just curious as to whether any of you have experienced any big data fluctuation. Particularly using something the size of money variably is too difficult to maintain. So an example was I bought your up. All my friends, they're all really excited for a month, but they're also active people. And after a month, notifications that were dropping off, people got to charge it, and all that stuff. So I'm wondering from a design point of view, in your own experiences when you're obviously have adoption, and people are using it, like what should drop off, and how do you design to sort of maintain and engage, keep bringing people back, keep making them charge it using these?
So to rephrase the question, it's what's the role of data? How much feedback, how much data do we give our users, and how useful is that over the long term? That maybe some people get kind of data fatigue, as you said. And those figures become not meaningful after some time.
We were talking about this. Okay, we were talking about this earlier, and I think one of the things we talk about in the aging space a bit is qualified self instead of quantified self. And I think especially older adults are kind of like, just tell me the minimum amount I need to know to kind of get the information I need, and don't overwhelm me. Give me the ability to drill down, but like Lively's product, their kind of interface is all very kind of happy face, smiley face, or neutral face and negative. And if everything's happy, then mom's doing fine and I don't need to drill down. So I think kind of higher level information that's summary that gets out of the way for people, I think makes it easier to engage.
we look at it as we sort of track cumulative progress. What doesn't get old is telling the story. Our users think about, I'm going to scrapbook this journey I'm on. I want to share pictures, and I want to share the story. I want to share who I'm with. The stats are nice to back it up. So if anything, we are collecting a lot of data to give a few key insights and provide motivation behind what is actually a qualitative story.
I think it's helpful to think about what those stats and graphs are doing to your short-term incentives, and I see it as two things. One, if you have a trending line, you don't want it to dip because that would be a loss. So there's a loss aversion of wanting to keep your momentum going. But second, there's also a coaching element to it. You know that you're on track and you're, doing good, because fitness and wellness especially, it can take a while to know that your body is undergoing the changes you want it to go. But a graph lets you say, oh yes, I'm trending towards what I want. I'm on track. I don't need to change anything. I have the confidence that if I do this tomorrow, it's taking me slightly closer to my goal. If data fatigue is setting in, it might be that they have stopped caring about that. And I don't know if that's data fatigue. I don't know. That feels like a more underlying issue about what their goals are or how much they care about the momentum of a line. And I would try to think about it, like that, a little bit below just the data layer.
And I'll chime into that. I think that numbers and metrics are great when they can't be used for punitive reasons. So if people start looking at these numbers and that becomes the punishment, I think you'll get what's called reactance. It's a psychological phenomenon of when our autonomy is threatened, we push away. And so I think that might be what people start feeling after a while when the results start feeling punitive. I'm sorry we have to cut it short. I just got we're done. But I want to thank our panelists and thank you all for your attention.